Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. I'm joined by none other than one of my very good friends here in the UK scene. His name is Jack Welch, and he's mostly known at the moment for the work that he's doing with the, I guess you could say, gothic, synth-esque sort of band called NAUT, which he's been working with for the last 5 or 6 years. They have a very powerful new album out at the moment via Season of Mist. It is titled Hunt, and I highly recommend you to check it out. And Jack is also a graphic designer known as Seventhbell Designs or Artwork, and he does a lot of great stuff. And on top of that, he's also an ex-member of the UK black metal band Funeral Throne. Now, that band, as far as I'm concerned, are still one of the best extreme metal bands to ever come out of the UK. I had the privilege to not only share the stage with them multiple times and see them, but to also actually fill in on some live guitars for them at some point in the past. I believe back in January 2017. So it's going back a little while now. And Jack also performed in another band called Deities, which I still currently play live guitars for. So him and I have shared the stage together a few times, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's one of those people who really takes this heavy metal business seriously, as I do, and as I'm sure many of the listeners of this podcast do as well. So yeah, coming shortly will be my conversation with Jack. We delve deep into a lot of different topics, which I'm sure you guys will enjoy, as always. Thank you very much for tuning in to Iblis Manifestations. If this is your first time tuning into this podcast, I have a lot of conversations with different artists, mainly, but also just people who I find are driven and find their own path in life and have a different perspective. And we get to have very nuanced conversations about things, life, universe, art, or even sometimes just the mundane things, or just heavy metal. Really, that's what a lot of this tends to revolve around at the end of the day. So if you, of course, enjoy the conversations here, feel free to subscribe, share them around. It's a massive help. This is very much an underground thing at the moment, and it will stay that way, of course. So now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome my very good friend, Mr. Jack Welch, to Iblis Manifestations. All right. Evening, Jack. How's it going, man? Good
Hello.
to finally have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good. Tired, as always, but busy, which is better than being bored. So, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, great. We were just talking, and I completely forgot to mention, but I was just murdering myself in a cold bath just about half an hour or so ago. So if my face looks extremely red, that's probably why, So yeah, yeah. I noticed this morning that I felt like I was coming down with something, and I thought I was gonna fucking, I felt weak. So I was like, okay, time to change that. So I had to jump in a cold bath for 5 minutes and then, fix the problem.
Yeah, I'm feeling similarly today. So I think a cold shower is going to be a thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's all good. So, first off, thank you for joining me on the podcast. I've been really looking forward to this. You're amongst the people that ever since I started this, when I was thinking of like, who of my friends I could have on the show, you were one of the first people that came to mind. So I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. But also, of course, we've got a very special occasion that you guys just released a new album, and obviously that's with your band NAUT, which you've had going for I think about maybe 6 years. I can't remember how long ago actually it was that you started NAUT.
Yeah, roughly that, I think. I mean, it's been an idea for a lot longer. Myself and Gavin, the vocalist, we've written everything up until this point. Yeah, we met at university, so when we were 18. And so it kind of the idea, the sort of seed of the idea grew then. But yeah, we found a lineup and sort of took it more seriously probably around 2016, something like that. So yeah.
Sure. Well, it's you've obviously got the 3 releases prior to this. You know, you did your first EP, Raise the Lights, and then you did a couple of other stuff after that. But then this is your very first full length, which is it's very exciting, man. You know, because you've also released it with a very good label as well, and it just seems to me that everything has musically kind of come to fruition for yourself. So just tell me a little bit about this album, because to me it's I'll just say, you know, like, it sounds really good in the sense that the guitars are just like super clear, but then you're not afraid to experiment, you know, so like you'll still have like a straightforward beat, but then every now and then, especially I think like on your second track, you'll go into some like dissonant realms of like almost Dead Spell Omega kind of stuff, but then on the other side of it you'll have like some synths and things going on, you know. It's like, to me, when I was listening to it the other day, I was thinking like, this is the contemporary love child of Drab Majesty and Fields of the Nephilim. I don't know if that's an accurate description at all, but feel free to elaborate on your own thoughts and feelings on this record and just how it came about, really.
You pick up on some interesting things there, things that other people haven't really talked about, I think. So that's good. We've been doing a bunch of press for it recently, so like interviews and podcasts and radio interviews, which is obviously great. But some of the stuff is more surface, and some of the stuff is quite in depth. So, you know, but even the in depth ones haven't picked up on some of the stuff you mentioned there. So that's really cool. I think firstly,
we listen to the same shit, so that generally tends to help.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. You know, we talk a bunch, so I guess we know what each other is into and where the interests cross over. But yeah, I think firstly, artwork kind of doesn't it kind of fully exist until it's out there and being heard. I mean, that's not, you know, there's an ego to that, but I think just in a basic way, it's kind of, it's you know, the listener brings something to that experience as well and to the music. So I love it. I love talking to people about it. It's, you know, it's my baby, so I love to discuss with people what they hear in it, what they see in it. So yeah, it's fascinating to me.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a few things that cross over, I guess. Like you say, there is a dissonance, and something I'm really keen to bring in. I guess that's the kind of black metal background. Yeah, I think it kind of came about during lockdowns. So myself and Gavin, like I say, the singer, we write everything together. So we kind of like, obviously were enforced to separate during that period, but we kind of used it as a kind of catalyst to put a fire under our ass, because we knew we wanted an album after a string of sort of EPs and singles, and it was frustrating that the world kind of collapsed around us when we felt like we were making some good progress in terms of shows and in terms of, you know, exposure and PR and stuff. So and it was quite important for us to get a label. I think, you know, just to we felt that finding a label that we sit on. It doesn't have to be as, you know, as kind of popular or as big as Season, but it's, you know, it's obviously great that worked out. Yeah, so it grew out of lockdown. We kind of met, we shared ideas, and it's just a continuation of stuff that we've done before, I would say, stylistically. But I hope it feels more like our own sound now. You can still hear the influences, and, you know, everything is postmodern and everything is a reference to something else, and it always has been. And that's unavoidable. But I hope that I'm getting to the stage now where NAUT sounds like what it sounds like when I pick up a guitar, if that makes sense. You know, so that's the riffs that I write. and it was the same with old bands. Yeah, I just and stylistically, it's always been NAUT really, but and it didn't work for previous like bands, so it's nice just to have the freedom. NAUT, we call it a post-punk band. It's a dark rock band, but it's to me it's a rock band, and that's it. And there's but it's black metal is rock, rock is rock, goth is rock, blues and all that. There's like blues rock, it's rock music. So we've got a lot of freedom, and I think it's that stylistic freedom that maybe comes through. It's just the instruments that we choose to do this through obviously have a certain timbre, a certain atmosphere, and we use synth, we use drum machine, we use guitar. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, man. Even when I am comparing it to other types of bands and things as such, and that's because, I think a lot of times we do this because there absolutely is a unique sound to it. So I think that as music listeners, especially, what you're trying to do is try and find things that you perhaps recognize from the past. So that's not to say that what you're hearing is not original, but rather the characteristics which are sort of predefined in your mind, which you're now trying to find the point of relatability within the music. Yeah. So I think that's mostly what it is, really. And I think that you've kind of got the perfect build-up here, because obviously you did your first EP about 5 years ago. And then since then, you did a couple of other releases. One of them included the stuff that you did with Henrik Palm, previously of In Solitude, and he also played the bass in Ghost as well. And now coming back and then releasing the full-length album, but then also doing it through Season of Mist, it just seems like it's the perfect kind of concoction. It's the perfect build-up. And it also just happens to be, I think, to your own point, this is by far the most unique, but also identifiable your music has been as NAUT music, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, it's I think I believe in synchronicity and experiences coming together at the right time and right place, and it's happened a bunch of times, and it's beautiful. To me, it's the magic of it. I think if you're allowing yourself to be open to all those things, I think people from a black metal background or a metal background, if you're doing it right, you have those thoughts and you have that approach to things. So it's just been great. It's it continues to be. It's a bit frustrating, at times, as you'll know. It's when you're kind of putting yourself out there and you get hit, you get knockbacks, and it's happening a bunch lately, to be honest, trying to book shows and all sorts. But we've been dealt a great hand with a lot of stuff. Like you say, with Henrik joining, providing a solo, that was a big thing for me as a big fan of In Solitude, and the fact that he just said yes, straight away, and then we had a solo on the track, one that I will never be able to play because I'm not that kind of player, but I'll try. But and then with Season of Mist, totally, it's we have our old booking agent to thank for that, because he was able to put us under their nose, but Michael loved it straight away, Michael from Season. So it's been good stuff all around, really. I just hope it continues. But I think we put a lot of time, myself and Gavin especially, and the other members too as well, Laura and Andy. We put a lot of time in. So we put the legwork in, and it's got to pay off, right? So it's about what you put in.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think that the first and foremost, like most important success you could get out of it is just the fact that you're that happy with the outcome.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely something that, just for anyone who's not listened to this yet, it's sort of like it very much has that kind of timeless element to it, the way it sort of intertwines, like music intertwines with culture. And this is that sort of thing, like you can imagine being at that, like the old vinyl store that used to be in Camden Town, and then just like scrolling through the vinyls and then coming across this one somehow, but somehow in the past, even though the album's only just come out now, it's got that kind of vibe to it, where you feel like this is its own thing, really. and it's great, as far as the music itself is concerned as well. It definitely got some depth to it, but also it can be intricate when it wants to be, but also when it's stripped back, it can still do that, but then it can have the less is more kind of approach when it comes to those parts as well, which I know for yourself as a musician, I know that you're taking very intentional steps to kind of take that direction with the music, really, and it's exciting, man. It's awesome to see how much the band is growing already, and the feedback that is received has been pretty cool on those, especially on the videos that you released as well, it seems.
Yeah, the response has been pretty good across the board, really. It's yeah, I do look into I do fall down that rabbit hole of looking at reviews sometimes and what have you. It doesn't really bother me if they're not particularly always positive, but they've just been pretty good. So yeah, the videos have been getting some good views. Obviously that's helped by Season of Mist and the sort of team there as well. But yeah, the responses are really good. I think something you said that's quite interesting about it, kind of coming across it and it feel it in that record store, that analogy there, and it has like a bit of a timeless element. I think I've been thinking about it recently. It's kind of like retroactive music in a way. And I think when we first started, people were like, I remember even speaking to people in bands, I won't name names, but that we played with slightly bigger bands, and they've gone, "Oh, it's really good music," but I just think it could be more modern. And I'm like, well, I don't think it, because they heard it as like an old sounding band. I mean, production wise on the early stuff was a bit raw. So I guess it did have kind of more of a late 70s, early 80s feel. And, we do use vintage gear when we record, so it has that kind of sound. But yeah, I think to me, it's just what goth music or what post-punk music should sound like. And then, so that's just what it sounds like. So the metal bands that I listen to sound like Judas Priest because to me that's what metal sounds like. I'm not going to listen to a modern metal band because to me that's not what metal sounds like. So the fact that NAUT sounds like a bunch of goth bands is because that's what goth music sounds like. So it makes sense to me. So I don't, I try to take it with a pinch of salt when people say, "Oh, it's it sounds like a retro kind of band or what have you." And I guess it kind of does, but like I say, that's just what that music should sound like to me. So it's like, the production might get a little bit cleaner, and it has done with the album, but we're still using vintage. We're still using gear that kind of our heroes used, and like the tones are the tones. That's just what that should sound like. So yeah, I'm kind of going a long way around saying it, but yeah, I think you get the point.
I do, yeah, and also just to a point you said earlier. You said that you listen to metal bands that sound like Judas Priest because that's what defines metal to you. So do you only listen to Iron Maiden then in that case?
No, it's, I mean, that's
I can't believe I went there. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Shit. Can't believe it. I love Maiden.
Maiden.
Fucking.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. No, I just mean that, when I'm finding contemporary bands, I don't want them to sound like a carbon copy. You listen to a band like Butcher and they're fucking incredible. And they tick all those boxes, but they're not a retroactive band. They're not doing it. They look the part. They look kind of a bit retro, but they're not just a carbon copy. They're their vocalist really sets them apart. There's modern elements to it, but yeah, it's that's just what it should sound like.
Yeah, for sure. No, I feel you, man. I am, as much as I'm someone who I do very much advocate for, trying different things and new things, but also then not just accepting it because it's a new thing either. And that's kind of my approach, especially when it comes to something like metal, because it's just it is at its best when it's in the traditional format. So when the experimentation is done, for me personally, I can always value some artistic expression, at least when someone tries. But for me personally, it always only has to be just slightly further away from the tradition, if that makes sense.
I think I'm possibly being, a bit of a twat about it, but yeah, no, I get you. I think certain genres allow for a little bit more that pushing, that trying new thing. I think post-punk, for instance, was a genre that was based on experimentation. It kind of came out of that. So there was experimentation within it naturally. I think by the time it got to the 90s, it kind of like the kind of goth sound, especially it went somewhere that I don't like. And that's why I think it's got legs as a genre these days, because it's kind of what I think we're doing is we're picking it up with that in mind. And I think I probably talked myself into a bit of a corner there, but I think with certain things I like kind of the traditionalism, and then certain things I don't necessarily always, think it should be 100%. That's the way it's done, so that's the way it needs to be. Like we know what we push into sort of almost like soundtrack territory, and I think we're pushing into a few different branches with the second album that we're writing now. So so maybe I'm just talking bullshit, but
no, I get it, man. It's like the same. I was thinking about this recently, where it's like, you go from Black Sabbath to Metallica, or then like from there to like Slayer, or like Motorhead to Slayer, and then from Slayer you go into Morbid Angel, and up until that point there's obviously a lot of experimentation involved, but that's fucking great shit. But then
I guess we're really lucky where we are now, right? Because we have this whole wealth of all these genres that everyone's done the hard work for us. So the experimentation within our genre is actually not really experimentation. It's just I'm going to mix doom metal with death metal, or I'm going to, so yeah, maybe there's experimentation or false experimentation. I don't know, but but when people start putting jazz in, that's when it can fuck off. So
that's that's what I'm saying, because it's like that in itself is quite a leap, but then you go from something like that into like, I don't know, Infant Annihilator, and it just completely loses all the magic somehow. And I think there's somehow a balance to just keep finding the magic of metal, and then just keeping it interesting, and obviously
maybe certain individuals can get away with more than others. People who've got a bit of a spark about them maybe can get around, get away with more than maybe other bands can. I don't know. But.
Possibly, possibly. I guess maybe that's what Danzig was doing. I think what made him interesting was maybe just that spark, really, because it's like pretty much most of the riffs on his, especially at least the first album, it's like they were all pretty much done even by that point. Like there's like one song, I forget which Judas Priest song it is, but it's basically Am I Evil? Not Am I Evil, fucking Am I Demon? Same shit again. Fucking, and it's like that, and it's like that kind of thing. I think it's from like the second Priest album, and it's like, it's just one of them things. I'm not the biggest Pantera fan or nerd in the world, but Dimebag said this thing that I always stuck with me, and it's that we're all just sharing riffs. And I fucking love that. I think that's that is about as accurate as it gets, really, because it's like technically there's only so many notes on a fucking guitar. There's only so many drum beats that you can have that are actually comprehensible. So eventually you're gonna run out of these things, and I feel like we might have run out of them way back in probably like the 90s or whatever. So the fact that we're still going now is just like taking that, like you said, taking all the different ingredients and then just creating our own projection through it, and creating something personal, but also like you're partaking in a culture as well, which I actually think is a beautiful thing to be able to partake in, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like it brings you closer to yourself. Like the more you express yourself, the more it brings you inwards somehow, and that must have been interesting for yourself, because obviously you obviously for anyone who might not be aware, they might be, but if they're not, you obviously spend quite a lot of years, if not a lot more years, with Funeral Throne than you did with NAUT. And Funeral Throne, I've said this to you before, so I'm not just kissing ass, but I think as far as UK black metal is concerned, probably the best. I think there's been a lot of really good bands from here. There's also been a lot of really shit ones, but I think I think that I mean, Ninkar Saga are also a really good band from here, musically especially. They're fucking solid. But Funeral Throne for me was, it always just felt like the band that just got all the ingredients right. So just tell me a little bit about this contrast of just the expressions, really, and just let's actually talk about Funeral Throne, because this is I've been waiting to do this for a while, as you can probably see. So let's talk about that. Like how have you first of all just gone from basically the black death metal or black in heavy metal or something that I think you guys were calling it back in the day, or going from that to basically what it is you're doing in NAUT right now, and how the two perhaps even correlate with one another.
I think, they said the past is another country, and it kind of feels like that with Funeral Throne, to be honest. It's kind of weird thinking about it in a way, because it wasn't that long ago, but it also feels like 10 years ago that we were doing it even. But yeah, I mean, I guess stylistically they seem quite different, but to me they're kind of not, because so even some of the NAUT riffs that I'm using now, they're kind of what I had in mind for old Funeral Throne stuff. So it's kind of, I think it probably speaks more about where Funeral Throne was going before we imploded. So yeah, I guess there is a contrast that definitely, there must be, there is, because it's on one hand you've got extreme metal, and then the other you've got quite dancey, catchy, kind of post-punk stuff. But the transitions was pretty easy. We had Ryan, who was the drummer in Funeral Throne. We had him in NAUT for a while before we moved abroad. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, Ryan wrote a lot of the Funeral Throne stuff, the stuff that made up our second album, at least, with contributions from all of us. But I think it's fair to say that Ryan wrote the most of that. So I guess NAUT was my first expression of just me writing. Writing with Gavin, but kind of, I was kind of number two. We were both kind of number one. Sorry, in that crew, and whereas it felt like Ryan was very much the writer. I handled all the lyrics and the kind of sort of conceptual and the art side and all that. And me and Ryan have a very close bond, so I was definitely a big part of that as well, musically. But yeah, so I guess they are quite different, in some ways. Then in thinking about it for the first time ever, yeah, I think NAUT is the expression of me musically, whereas I think Funeral Throne was Ryan, and a different me, really. Yeah,
A different me. So I mean, you also joined Funeral Throne when you were super young as well. Weren't you like 16 years old or something when you started with those guys?
We started it when we were 14.
Damn.
Yeah, 13, 14, something like that. I think John was a little bit older, but me and Ryan, when we were a three-piece, we met in school. We used to live over the road from each other, and we used to jam in his, mom's house, parents' house. Jamming all sorts from Slayer to whatever, like rock stuff. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Different me. It's it was from about the age of 14 to probably about the age of 27, 28, and yeah, a lot of misspent youth in yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, so it's kind of
you played like some of the best fucking shows ever, though. Like I look back at that now, and I like to think that, when I look at what Trivax is doing now, I like to think we're doing well. But then I look back at what some of the shows that you guys were fucking playing back then. It's like you did Armageddon Fest in London, where you're playing with Watain, Repugnant, Von, Devil's Blood. It's like, holy shit, that was you were one of those bands that you were doing these shows, and you did all kinds of other gigs, like with Aura Noir or Inquisition. I think you were fucking killing it, and and it's a shame, because you just pretty much confirmed, because I was gonna ask you about that, and you said when the whole thing imploded. So is that it?
Well, I don't know. Never say never. We've not really discussed it. Ryan came back from Canada, and we've had the odd discussion, but we've all sort of formed different things. John's in Master's Call, and Bear's in various projects, but he's just got his new band Hexenbrenner, and Ryan is kind of writing his own stuff, and he had been for a while, even when we were doing Funeral Throne. Yeah, and I've got NAUT, so I don't know, never say never, but I think it would have to feel like we're doing it for the right reason, and I don't think that's there at the minute for me specifically. Things have just changed too much, I think. Yeah, it would mean going back to a very different place, and I'm up for that, I think, but just not yet. Just to do it justice, I don't want to. I feel. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'd get in a room together and it'd feel right, and it would just feel like it always did. But I don't think it will.
What makes
so it's a
you
bit of a
think
hard
that?
one.
Because it
Sorry?
seems. What makes you think that? Because it seems to me that you're up for the idea of going to that sort of more extreme and more aggressive place. So what is it that makes you think that at the moment, at least, this wouldn't work out?
Just timings of things. Like NAUT is kind of taking over, really. I guess simply put, that's where my it's been. Yeah, no, it's Funeral Throne was very much an expression of me as well. Like I say, handling the lyrics and artistic side, and we were definitely like a unit, extremely, close, and we kind of like, stab someone if they got in a fight with one of our guys. Yeah, and I just think NAUT's has taken precedence really now. It's a different beast, and it's a different facet of me as a person, as someone who does magical practice, anything like that. It's a different energy, I suppose you could call it. It's drawing from a slightly different current, and I think it would mean tapping into another current that I used to, which was very self-destructive.
Remember when we did that show in Blackheart together, and I turned around and said, "Oh, you bleed very well."
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not against that.
Yeah.
I'm really, it's a part of me, and it's not that part of me is not going to go away. And it's still, it still came out when we were playing together in Deitus and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. And it's not that I don't want to go back to that. It's just at the minute things are on a different, trajectory, and I kind of want to honor that. And I think it would mean sort of turning my back on some working that I've done in the last few years, and I'm not sure how well that would go for me. Or
yeah, you know how the saying goes, man. A wolf that chases too many rabbits ends up being hungry. And I think that's perhaps the case, because you've got something going with NAUT, which creatively, obviously, you're feeling satisfied with. And and obviously there's reliability there, because being in a band is not just about being rock and roll and then having good music. It's a lot more than that, and you need everyone to be on the ball with things like that. So if you've got something like that going with NAUT, and then you've got label backing, and you've got all these opportunities, I think it perfectly makes sense to me why you would choose to pursue that further in such a way.
Yeah, Funeral Throne was chaos. It was beautiful, but it was chaos. It was yeah, I mean, some amazing experiences, like the things you touched on. We got to share the stage with some absolute heroes. A lot of bands who aren't together anymore. We came up in 2004-ish when we started, when we were kids, and to be honest, it felt like, at least, I mean, maybe I was too young to know any better, but it felt like there wasn't really anything in the country. I knew there were bands from like 2000 and 2002, that kind of period in the UK, but it just felt like it was totally barren, and it honestly felt like we were just sometimes like the only people doing it, especially in the Midlands where we're from. Yeah, but then it's kind of grown, and I think, to me, black metal's grown into a very different thing now, and there's a lot of music in the UK that kind of calls itself black metal, but to me just isn't. And I think it's kind of happened globally, and I don't really see where I fit in with that scene, to be honest. I mean, I still enjoy bands and I still enjoy going to gigs, but I find it quite hard to see myself fitting with that. I come from, I'm not particularly old, but, and it must have been the same for the people who came up in the 90s. By the time the 2000s came around, they were probably looking at the bands then going, "Oh, this isn't for me." And I kind of feel a little bit like that now. So I think it is a generational shift, maybe. But bands, the French black metal scene for me was the pinnacle, really. And then you got the orthodox stuff. On Scalped Early Watain, and but it was Arcane Faustus first couple of first few records, Antaeus, Catharsis, incredible, like, black metal. Yeah, and I just
66.
don't see that anymore. Yeah, so I think that's kind of a big part of it as well.
Interesting. I mean, all the bands you just mentioned, they're totally like fucking great. No questions about that. And yeah, I think it's just one of them things, man. It's complicated. I mean, you never do the music that you do just to be a part of a scene as such. Anyway, you do it because you want to express yourself, or at least I think. If you are writing riffs just to be a part of something, you're probably kind of fucking up, I think. Anyway, and chances are...
I'd agree with that. I think, if we did more funeral throw music, it'd be on our terms, absolutely. But I just, I don't know if I don't know if I want to play. Maybe if we came back, we'd only play with like avant-garde acts. I don't know, but yeah, no, I mean, it would be bands that that I consider the kind of right kind of bands. But then I don't know what progress is there in that. If you, it comes down to reasoning, like you say. Why are you doing it? We weren't doing it necessarily to get on bigger and bigger shows. It was very much the kind of it had to happen. It was the inner working of coming out. Me, it was as a teen and early 20s. It was about like totally opening myself up physically. With the harm on stage and all sorts, and just trying to completely like fuck myself up. So and it worked. It took a long time.
What was the purpose behind that, and how do you feel now? What was your sort of, because I know, like, not only have I obviously had the privilege of sharing the stage with you, but I've also seen you play before as well. I think it's coming up to 10 years now, actually. Where did this come from? Why take such an approach to the way you do things on stage? Why be so destructive? And why did you feel the necessity to take yourself to such places? Or was it simply that you were already there, or you just had to? What's the source for this kind of approach? Because I may find it relatable, but I'm curious to know exactly what initiates that.
I guess it was started as a compulsion from childhood, really, and I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. I mean, I was kind of, as a child, I was upset. I wasn't raised Catholic, but I was baptized Catholic and went through a few of those different rituals. And I've always been obsessed with ritual pain and mortification and asceticism, especially at one point, and hermetism. Hermeticism and it was that kind of aesthetic mortification. It was that idea. So on one hand, it was that kind of religious fervor. It was an act of like religious devotion to do that. It's a blood offering, and it's still something that I do today. Is offer blood. I think I don't think about it too much. It's just it feels like a potent thing, and it's what the voices tell me to do. That's what it's always been. It's just, and it's not even that. It's unconscious. It's just, it feels like the act to do. And in Funeral Throne, it was very just music. Then around the time of Funeral Throne, it felt like that was my. Yeah, it was a compulsion, I guess. It was totally about literally opening myself up and letting, call it the unclean spirit at that time, the unclean spirit enter and take over. And, it's that idea of the anti-cosmic, and that idea of, ripping a portal in the fabric of, something, the universal, and yourself as a microcosm of that. It felt like a way of letting that in, and a means to an end for that. And but also a kind of like with mortification to show that it's just flesh, that it's just that it is just this kind of matrix, and I guess a kind of an illusion, really. And the idea of overcoming pain, crossing those thresholds, crossing moral thresholds, for yourself, to prove things to yourself, to see what knowledge there can be gained in that. So it was all these, I guess, grandiose religious ideas that came through. And that's some, black metal for me is religious music, and I guess it was that really. I'm not sure what else I can say about that, but yeah, it was just, and it was just I had to. That was it. I had to do this, and I had to kind of do it in front of people in a way. There's an ego to that which I don't quite understand, but maybe it's like, it's maybe it's like an agori or something. Doing these kind of weird things in front of people, to sort of show them the impermanence, and to show them the futility, but also the and laughing at that, and kind of seeing that as not important ultimately. And people who can see past that see that futility, but it's not a bad thing. It's yeah, all in nothing and nothing in all. So it's that kind of thing.
This is why I think you were the best black metal band in the UK.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And, like you say, there's some bad ones, so maybe it's not too much of an accolade, but I'll take it.
No, I understand, man. I think the perfect word to describe what you're saying there is a flagellation. Is the act of causing oneself, especially physical pain, to have a higher reach to a divine source, I suppose. But that's a fascinating one to me. Do you think that there's like some kind of if you can dissect your own psyche perhaps a little bit, do you think maybe there was some kind of an urge to simply just want to cause harm, but you internalize that instead and take it out on yourself? So it's almost like, look what can be done kind of thing, because the music's essentially a weapon, and I think that especially for certain parts of Funeral Thrones music, perhaps not all of it, because it also very much has moments of retrospect as well, and moments of just melancholy, and like where you kind of bring it down a bit. But do you think that kind of was a part of that? It's just the just revealing the weapons and the tools, and just showing that you're willing to go that distance, but also rather than actually cause physical harm or damage to anyone in the audience, you do it to yourself instead. Do you think it's that kind of an urge, that perhaps because the reason why I'm saying this is because for me, and I've said this before, but to me a lot of times it feels that, especially in black metal, or almost exclusively in black metal, it exists in other places, but nowhere near as clear as it is here between us. And it's that as an artist, you can go through experiences in life, and you can have positive experiences and you can have negative experiences, but it's almost like you're not equipped to react to the negative experiences in the right way, or perhaps you're withdrawn, and so you reserve your reactions, and it's almost like you pour them in within a well that's inside you, and when it comes to the time to perform on stage, that's when you let it all out.
I think that's possibly part of it. I wasn't doing this every single day of my life, and being on stage or performing live, but I mean being on stage and live, I think that was the time to do it. But it's also there's having like a magical practice or ritual practice or anything like that, but I kind of used to beat myself up a bit, not physically, funnily enough, but about not allowing enough time for that side of my life. But then it was kind of like clicked with me one day. It's like, no, this is the music is that for me. I was talking to an artist friend recently who kind of had the same issues, but they were beating themselves up as well about not putting enough time into ritual or anything like that. And they had that same realization that actually the artwork that they make, that's their time, that's their looking inside, that's their time in that world, and what comes out through their pen or whatever it is a part of that ritual. And for me, that's what the music was as well. I mean, your point about thinking about it as sort of like a, did you mean like kind of not, so I was doing it to myself so I wouldn't do it to other people, or I'm not quite sure what you meant with that.
It's more I mean, you could go that way with it. What I was coming from is more just a display. It's almost like pulling your knife out, but then just pointing it at someone rather than actually like slashing them. That's kind of, I think, but also a showcasing of like, I think you said it yourself. It's like, here, look, it's just flesh,
Yeah, I think that was kind of the biggest part. That was the point of it. Yeah, in a way. Yeah, I think that kind of more sort of like hones in on that idea for me at least. But like I say, it's quite a while ago now, and it's yeah, I think with hindsight, it was part of the process. That, and it's one stage almost. It's one sort of seal to break, and then you're on to the next thing, the next part of that process. That's kind of what it feels like for me. It feels like it was a necessary breaking down, Salve coagula, that idea of dissolving to make something stronger. And, you think about mortified flesh, like scar tissue is stronger than, what was there before. So, yeah, there's something in that, I like, that I enjoy. Yeah, so it was a necessary stage, I think.
That's interesting, man. When was Funeral Throne's last live show? Because I think it might have been the one that we did together, because you guys hadn't played the Midlands. Actually, no, it won't have been, because I know you did a tour with Inconcessus and Datus later. But
it might have been that. I cannot remember. It was either that or the Niflheim show, but maybe it wasn't.
No, I think Niflheim was May 2017. And when I put you guys on in Birmingham, because that was like your first show in your Midlands, your home place, basically, that was in October 2017. And then at some point, I think in 2018, you did the tour with those two other bands, and I
think it would have been that tour.
Yeah. How do you think you've changed as a person? Because you pointed earlier, you said the old me. How do you think you've changed as a person since basically Funeral Throne kind of was put to the back burner, and obviously now that you're doing what you're doing with NAUT, what do you think? What do you think are some of the things that you learned? Because when you take a path like this, and especially when you do things as intensely as you did, when it comes to the performances and things like that, it's it's kind of like, it's very rewarding. It can be spiritually very satisfying, but personally speaking, this is just from my own experience, I also feel like you can get so drowned in things like that like normal life and just normal functionality kind of goes out the window a little bit, and then you come back and realize that, oh shit, this needs time. I still have, whilst I may have figured a lot of things out when it comes to the spiritual side of things, or had all these profound experiences, I still can't do this normal thing over here, so I need to work on this now. How do you think, and this is me, I'm not making presumptions about you, but rather speaking about reflecting on my own experiences and development, how do you think that progression has been like for you in the last 5 years or so?
I think it's kind of what I got from that when I think it's about channeling the intensity, and where that energy goes. I'm still quite an intense person, but I guess in other ways, in terms of, I'm a fire symbol, so I think there's that, it's I'm Sagittarius, so it's that kind of, I think it's just about where that energy goes, and the energy went into a different place before, and it's still there, and it's still kind of ferocious. I can't sit still. I'm always have to be doing something. I just got a little bit better, a little bit wiser, I think, and spin a lot of plates. But that intensity goes into the sort of behind the scenes, I guess, as well as on stage. That's been the biggest thing for me. It's the realization that the day-to-day running of a band or being an artist or anything requires commitment and requires a bit more focus. And not that I wasn't focused back then, but I'm a lot more focused now. And it was very, like I say, it was kind of chaos before. It was a bunch of kids really having a good time, as well as being something that was a bit of more of a spiritual journey for me personally. yeah, I'm just a bit wiser and a bit more. I just know how the business works a bit more, I think, and that's kind of crucial.
Yeah.
So I've got my head screwed on a little bit more, but I still like to kick back and have a good time, and I still put the time in with the other aspects of my life. But I think that's it. I think it's just that channeling of that intensity and how that's changed.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's definitely, like, even just with NAUT music, whilst on the paper it might be, I guess, a little bit calmer or less intense.
Yeah.
There's that slight diabolic undertone that's still there. That's, to me, it's almost the same as it was before with like an album like Threshold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it, and I love that there are moments of like really catchy, dancey, parts, but it's always a bit melancholic and kind of gloomy sounding. But the message really isn't behind the music. It's about a call to power. Really, it's like it's like Judas Priest for me. It's that kind of um, looking at your surroundings and wanting something more from it. That's kind of lyrically, but the music is quite. It's kind of the antithesis of that, I guess. It's kind of, I think, this is quite anthemic. But I just like gloomy music, I suppose, and that's where it comes from. But one thing I particularly like is what you said, that there are these moments, and it kind of, hopefully, it kind of comes out of nowhere, where it's a little bit of a tear in the fabric of naught of the music you're listening to, and there'll be a little bit of dissonance that comes in, and that diabolical element, I guess, is part of that, and that's something that's always I like playing with those things. Like I love my favorite thing musically, and something that I do a lot in naught is syncopation. So that idea of using, a variety of like multiple rhythms and they're all played together at the same time. And so you make something off kilter with that. So, the bass will always be doing something a little bit different.
Right.
Listening to Gottfried from Revealing in Solitude, Gottfried Ullman, talking about on your podcast, actually, that idea of, writing a piece of music and sometimes he just uses like a single note and then you find the rhythms within that. And that's what I do with naught. I'll come up with a riff, and then I'll just be noodling away, and I'll be finding like a rhythm, a syncopated rhythm that works with it, and that'll be the bass line. And then it'll be another one again on top of that, which will be the keys, and then the drums might even be picking another rhythm. And the beauty of a drum machine, which is what we use at the minute, is we can have a basic, four on the floor rock beat that's really driving, but then we can add lots of different layers of percussion, and they can be electronic or they can be, overdub live stuff, and I just love that building up of layers. So I kind of lost my point about that, but that's been really important for me, and I think that kind of
No, that's cool. You had
well.
the percussion stuff that you mentioned. I know you got loads of that on the first EP, especially. You noticed that on there. There's like lots of like toms and things like that come in and out, and they're playing. And I guess that kind of like you can definitely go with that because it's almost like you consciously cling on to the straightforward rock beat that's in the middle, but then you've got all these other things almost like pulling your attention from the sides, I guess, which makes it a very interesting listening experience for sure, and actually creates definitely a psychedelic element to it as well, I would say.
Yeah, there's a push pull thing, and I love it. And some of the new stuff we've been writing, there's one track and it's just one drum beat. The core drum beat through the song is just one simple electronic drum beat, like kind of almost like 9 Inch Nails, like boom, that.
Yes.
But the song goes on this weird journey, and it doesn't sound like 9 Inch Nails. It's really quite bizarre. And so I love that there is a central rock to cling to, but then you are times hopefully you realize, oh fuck, I'm still in this ocean and I'm getting beaten around by these waves. So I think that's something I just enjoy in terms of writing.
I hear you, man. I hear you. And you know what? That's pretty cool. And I think people will appreciate hearing the intricacies of the songwriting as well. It's like, oh, this is not just some just copy and pasting a genre or anything. This is very much your own unique thing which you've created here, which I can absolutely appreciate. Just going back a little bit to what you were also saying just about that progression and the development that you've had. Because it's like I've seen the change in you as well. Like I can see you do seem a lot more focused now And and obviously we've obviously talked outside of the podcast scenario, so obviously I know certain things, but like you've definitely kind of, you've got that structure going now, and the energy, like you said, is being channeled properly rather than just destructively in like different angles. What do you think is something that is a valuable lesson, perhaps, or an insight that you have now that you maybe wish you had before, let's say from the time where you were in Funeral Throne?
That's quite a tough one, really. I find it hard thinking in those terms. Like, I don't believe that what I say is needs to be heard in some ways. I find it quite weird when it's like, give advice. I'm not like a sage.
Well, it's not from the point.
I know it's more about advice for myself, but
yeah,
yeah,
not
I
even
don't know.
advice so much, but something that more like a tool that you wish you were in possession of earlier on. That is like, if I knew that, I wouldn't have done this, or I would have done this differently. Does that make sense?
No, I think a big one is boundaries. And for me personally, there's a variety of reasons, I guess, through childhood and kind of a bit of a broken family thing, that meant I wasn't too boundaried, I think. And I would say that's a big one, setting those boundaries, knowing your worth, knowing when to say no, and not having to say yes to everything because you feel like, you have to be doing everything every minute of every day. But I think having those personal boundaries, and it pays off because people take the piss less, and they appreciate, I think, when they meet someone who is boundaried and kind of clear on what they want, especially when it's to do with their art, and their music. Yeah, so I think probably that.
That's such a big one, man, because and I guess that translates into your sort of tunnel vision focus that you have with NAUT as well. Because if you were trying to do everything else, you recently just left Deities, which is, obviously I was sad to hear that, because obviously for anyone who's not aware, I'm playing live guitars for that band as well, good friends of ours, and you were playing. We at least got to do 2 shows together, which was fun. But you got to leave. But as sad as I was to hear that, I completely understood. And when I hear you talk about something like that as well, I think what I can probably add to that is one thing that I've also learned personally is that you can look at a lot of things in life from the mindset of that things are like a currency. You know what I mean? So it's like you can look at a lot of aspects of life, especially from like a more of like a Saturnalian kind of a perspective, that there's this sort of weight and value to things, and that you don't have things limitless, right? And that you are constrained by these but by the way you spend your energy, your time. Like time is, like they say, that's the most valuable currency you got. And and I think that it's important to realize how you want to spend your currency. Like it's like budgeting your energy, budgeting the love that you have for people. Almost, it's like, who do I want to give this to the most? And just your time, your energy. It's like, because you're not going to do things half-assed. You're not going to go on stage and just do it for the sake of it. And it's like, if it's done, then all right, well, fuck it, whatever. That's one day of your life that you'll never get
exactly
back.
Yeah, and I think the older you get, the kind of more you think about that, I guess, to a degree. I'm not getting old. I don't feel older, and I don't feel kind of I'm not obsessing over time like I know some people like I know are. I don't want kids. I don't want to get married or anything like that. So I don't see limits in that way. But I agree. I think you do. You can't avoid that. There is a currency, like you say. And it's that cliche of spreading yourself too thinly. It's something I just don't want to do. I mean, I already do a lot of stuff. Obviously got my artwork and multiple. Have done multiple bands at one time, and it's just there's just seeing where your commitments lie, and I know where mine are now. So I think, and that's a big that's a big thing.
Yeah, and you don't just figure that out overnight. It takes so many years to actually
No.
understand the value of that. Like someone can even tell you that, but knowing it is different to, it's like, to me, I always say there's different ways of absorbing knowledge and it's or awareness rather. And it's that like someone can tell you, oh, one day you're just gonna pass away. And it's like, okay, I guess so, that will one day happen. But then there's feeling that knowledge inside you that, oh, one day this will happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
There's,
and I think this is one of them things. You have to feel the
there's a difference
information.
between, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and life events kind of cause that to happen as well. If someone passes away that you're close to, or anything like that. Yeah, I think there's just that in youth, like I think everyone is. You think you're sort of like bulletproof, but you're not. So it's you kind of come to that realization, and like I say, I don't let it sort of override. Obviously, that it's always there, but I try not to let that get in the way of experience. But yeah, it's something to be conscious of.
I think if anything, it's a motivation. No.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it is. Yeah, I've not really thought about it like that, but I guess it is. Yeah, spurred on by it, but no, I'm just here. I'm just doing stuff. That's it. Until I'm not, I don't really think about it.
Sure, sure. Oh, I like that. It's just being, and then feeding to the ether your brain waves and then your presence, and you're becoming your own egregore, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be doing stuff. I want to fill my time. I guess maybe it is. I want to fill that time because I know it's short or whatever. But I've not really thought about it. But I guess that's probably it. But yeah, I don't sit around and just Well, I do. There are times when I sit and stare, and that's just as important to have that time to me as it is to be mega busy. But my default is to be very busy.
Well, this is exactly what I mean when I say that there's like a budgeting kind of nature to how we spend our energy and our time and things like that. This is very much the case. Like it doesn't mean that you have to. I know, obviously, dissection. Like. I know that he always said like live every day as intensely as possible. I've said this before, but I don't think that's meant to be the case, and really karmically and energetically, that's just not possible. That doesn't reside within the laws of this universe, which I guess anti-cosmic
depends on the
works out.
It depends on the definition of intensely, I guess. One person's intensity is going to be very different to another's. So if I sat and I drew very intensively, very quietly for a day, that's intense, but it's not. I'm not running around, performing a black metal show or whatever. It's just intensity is a weird. I guess it's a weird word. I've used it a few times now, but yeah, I think there can be an intensity to all sorts of things.
But
it's about
it's like. I think the way I'm looking at it is that there is a cyclical nature to life. Like you can't always be running, you can't always be asleep, but you can do those intermittently from one another. Let's say, for example, if I were to go to the gym and then just stay there and then lift all the time, I'd fucking die. But I'd probably manage a solid 11 hours. But that's probably it.
Yeah.
But
I think
but if you do that and then you go and rest and then go back there and then do it again, then you can have that. It's like just like the way if you're a farmer, you can't just be planting seeds year round, much like you can't be harvesting year round. This is the cycle of life. This is how it works. There's this sort of back and forth nature, and it's all about finding the right balance there.
That's a really good analogy, I think. Yeah. Harvest time, and there has got to be time where you've got to wait for those things to come through. I think that links to sort of sigil magic and all that kind of stuff as well. I think there's a link there to be made. The idea of you're waiting for something, you're trying to tap into chaos magic, trying to tap into the unconscious mind where this stuff, where these seeds get planted, and then you're almost waiting to forget, and then that's when these things happen. I think that's probably part of it.
Absolutely, yeah. What's some of the things you've learned from partaking in magic with the CK?
Yeah. A lot of personal things, a lot of I think a lot of that development, where, like you're saying, what the difference between then and now, and it's just been a lot of personal development, and that's helped me develop strategies to navigate life and to process things and to deal with things, to deal with people, to deal with experiences. The strength in it, and it's shown me the weaknesses, and I get blindsided. And I love allowing myself to still have those moments where you're like, fuck, that's crazy. I never thought of things like that way. And it's almost like you're talking to yourself. You'll be doing something mundane, and then it will just be like, bang, I'm back somewhere, and it's like, oh, that's what that meant. And for me, that's what it means. It's that it's a time for introspection and opening yourself up. And for me, it's allowing to kind of to be guided as well, with the sort of the forces that I work with, and yeah, so I think that's probably part of it.
Allowing yourself to be guided. That's very interesting, and I think I hear you on that. What do you think when you hear a lot of Christians? Like I, for example, just recently saw this Christian guy on YouTube, and I'm not anti-Christian, just for the sake of the argument. I'm not coming from an anti-religious perspective, even though I could be. I was seeing this guy talking about how Kundalini energy and Kundalini yoga is the work of the devil, and it's a extremely demonic thing that like enters your body, and mind and all that, and guides you. And that's just an example. What do you think of that, or what do you think of the Christian perspective, or even the Muslim perspective? Because for example, in Sufi Islam, you've got this book called Shams al-Ma'arif, which is essentially a series of like very extensive occult sets of formulas and things which you can put into practice. Like for example, it teaches you about like harvesting the powers of Jupiter and Saturn, and how you have to draw on a certain cloth with certain numbers, things of that nature. I won't go into the details, but and then Muslims are adamant that the book is cursed, and then it'll invite the jinn into your life, and then Christians, will say like, oh, sigil magic, that's you're just like, the devil's gonna come and eat your ass when you're asleep. So what do you what do you think, of that perspective? Like let's say that you are being guided, and then hypothetically speaking, what would you say if that guidance is something that could work against you if they're correct? What do you think about that if you're to take yourself out of it?
I think that for me, there are times when it has definitely worked against me, and that's that slap in the face when you, so I believe certain things have happened in my life as a consequence of dabbling or not kind of giving the right reverence to certain things, and then adjusting that in my own practice or my own life. That's led to better things, and it's just like admonishing or like telling a child when they're doing something wrong, I think. And it's and to a lesser or greater extent, sometimes it can be quite catastrophic on your mental health or physically, and sometimes it can just be relatively mundane. But it's about that. It's about being able to see that that's what it is. That it's okay. That it is this. It's this thing that I work with that's telling me this.
When you say physically, how does such a thing translate physically when it goes wrong?
I mean, I'd rather not talk too personally about personal experiences with it, but maybe not physically in terms of like the body, but I mean in terms of relationships and in terms of other people. Yeah, I think it's and they've been necessary. That's what I'm alluding to there. They're necessary ties to be cut, even though at the time you're kind of blinded by them, and you're so close to them that you can't see outside, and it offers you that It offers you that distance to be able to see them from above almost. But at the time when that's taken away, that to me, it feels like it's the worst thing ever. But then with time, it heals.
I feel that, man. Yeah.
In terms of, I don't know, in terms of other people, Christians and people who proselytize, I think it's, I think people should talk less and listen more. And I think that's what it's about. Just leave. Is it Akakoki? There's a lyric, I just want to be alone with my gods. Something like that, and that's something I think about. I just don't care, really. I don't care what other people do or say.
Sure.
About their
it's not so much what other people care or think, but it's more so just inviting in the spirit of doubt, just for the sake of the argument. That they do say doubt is the greatest sin of all right, then let's have some doubt, but over the other side of it, just trying to understand, yes, there's definitely a guidance in the world and the universe, and fuck me, I've had it in my life, and I'm grateful to have experienced it, and I hope that I'll continue to do so, and I'll try and be as switched on as I possibly can to keep receiving it. But also there is that feeling of let's say the Christians are right, just hypothetically, let's say they're right, what do you what if that the guidance is not gonna go in your favor? You know what I mean?
I'm pretty convinced that it's not that. So and it's about perspective, isn't it? It's about what you believe. If you see things from their perspective, which I just don't, it's I think where I'm going, or where we all go, is probably very different to where they think they go. So it's where the energy transfers to. So, and talking in those terms, it's you. To me, you can't talk in those terms about the things that we, allow into our lives as people who deal with, who work in these ways. It's way bigger than that. It's it's futile even to make music as tribute, or to try and words by their very nature are limiting. That's the point of them, is to limit an idea down so that other people can understand it. That doesn't work for these energies, and I think you're dealing with something that if you were confronted with it, you just can't explain it. You can't categorize that. So I think that we think in very different ways to those people. And
I guess the difference between us and them is the fact that we dare to expand, we dare to leave the cage and go further beyond, and then see what's there. And sometimes that's gonna really suck, but every now and then you'll hit something, it's like the shovel, the tip of the shovel will hit a treasure chest beneath the dirt somewhere, and then it's like, all right, here we are. And
I don't expect to know the answer. I don't, anyone listening, I don't have the answers, and I don't want you to think any differently by what I'm saying, because this is just, I'm talking about my experience with it, but it's
sure.
It just reminded me of the Iron Maiden lyric, "Beyond is where I learn," and that's what it's all about for me.
Fuck yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, Jack, what a fucking pleasure, man. Awesome to fucking have you on. I think you and I, we can probably talk about this the occult aspect of things all night.
No, it's been great. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk, because obviously we know each other, and that helps. But just listening to what you do with other guests, what the sort of line of questioning and the conversational aspect, it's a lot more. So it's a lot more engaging, and that's what I like about it. Podcasts like this are the ones that I listen to. So you're doing a great job. Love it.
Thank you so much, man. Absolute pleasure to have you on. Let's just to bring the focus back to NAUT. Tell people where they can check you out, what they should keep an eye out for. If you've got anything that you just want to let them know, this is your opportunity, man.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so we've the album's just out. Hunt. It's on Season of Mist Records. Yeah, you can pick it up from most places. We've got a few live shows coming up. We're in the process of booking a bunch of stuff in, and a few things we can't unveil yet. Like a quite big UK festival we're going to be on. But yeah, we've got a show coming up. I can just say, I guess we're going to play a show in London. We're playing obviously the show with Deitus, the release show. We're opening that with Vortex Event, so that should be an interesting, eclectic lineup. Might put a few noses out of joint, but we'll see. Yeah, just check us out. We're on Bandcamp, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual terrible shit, and then yeah, which I have to update on a daily basis, it seems. And yeah, we're working on an album too. We're about 6 to 8 tracks in, so we're hoping to get that recorded by the end of the year and keep that stone
Momentum.
rolling. So, yeah,
Fucking awesome, man. Listen, I love what you're doing with NAUT. I think that just having followed you as a musician throughout the last 10 years or so that you and I have known each other, I think, I couldn't be more proud of the direction that you're headed, and I can see good things happening for the band. And, I think you should, just stick to it, and it'll come. And, the album is great as well. I can recommend it enough for everyone to come and check out. So yeah, man, all the best to you, and fucking, keep on killing.
cheers, man.
Awesome. Yeah, to everyone else listening as well, hope you guys enjoy this one. Be sure to go check out the new NAUT record, Hunt, which is now out via Season of Mist. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.